with Mandy Smoker-Broadus, who very graciously offered to come and do a brief presentation for us today, letting us know kind of where Missoula stands with Montana, and also giving us some ideas about possible best practices that are out there when folks are planning dropout prevention programs. So thanks, Mandy, and if you'd like to introduce yourself with more detail, that'd be great.
I'm going to try and model Greg here, or not Greg, Rob, and not use a microphone, but I might do it terribly. So if you can't hear me, let me know and I'll move over to the microphone. Thank you for having me. My name is Mandy Smoker-Broadus. I'm an enrolled member of the Fort Peck Sioux and the Assiniboine tribes. I began my teaching career there and was a principal and dean of students for 3 years in my home community, which was tough work, but also work filled with a lot of love. I moved to Helena over 2.5 years ago to work for the Office of Public Instruction. We have new funding and we're able to create divisions of Indian education folks working on important issues, and I focus solely on Indian student achievement. So I am going to spend a little bit of time talking specifically about American Indian student achievement data in your district, but we'll also look a little bit, to spend a little time looking at the bigger picture. I'm especially happy to be here because I earned my MFA from the University of Montana. And while I was in that program, my nephew, who was a sophomore in high school, came to live with me for the 2 years that I was here. So he was enrolled in Hellgate, so I recognize a lot of faces from Hellgate. It's good to be back. It's also good to be here because I think a community effort is so important, and much of the data and information that I present to you is going to focus on just that. Really the investment of all stakeholders in a community, creating a network of support around students, and not just students, but also their families. Because this issue is so deep that as far as poverty, as far as economics, so many other issues that come into play that have an impact on why students are dropping out of school. I know I have 15 minutes and I'm going to try and move quickly, but 15 minutes is tough for me. And I know we're already behind, so we'll get going. This is what we're going to look at just briefly today. This is data that the Office of Public Instruction collects, and I'm going to explain to you a little bit about what all of these various sources mean. We're going to look a little bit at the dropout rate because it is a little different from the graduation rate that Rob just shared data with you on. We're going to look at statewide dropout rates and trends. We're going to disaggregate that by grade level, school location, and the important difference between the urban dropout rate versus the rural dropout rate. We'll spend a little bit of time looking at specific Missoula district data. We'll look at a couple of important risk factors that I wanted us to consider briefly, those being the CRT scores, the criteria reference test that's used to determine adequate yearly progress, and we're going to tell that behind. We'll look at youth risk behavior survey data that the office collects every 2 years that I think will illuminate some important pieces for us to consider. Rob already covered a little bit about the impact of dropouts on our community, so I'll just fly through that briefly, and then just a few dropout prevention strategies. So let's get going here. I spend a lot of time at the OPI looking at data from various sources, and it's really important to remember, it's something that I remind our staff of always, and we heard it earlier from one of our panelists, that these aren't just numbers, these are students' lives, these are families' lives, with very complicated stories that created the situation where these students are at risk of dropping out. We're going to talk about the OPI. We're going to be using the OPI's method of collecting dropout data, which provides a snapshot of students who drop out in a single year from 9th to 12th grade. This is different from graduation data. Graduation data is a cohort rate, which tracks students that begin school in 9th grade and then graduate on time 4 years later as seniors. What the graduation rate loses, I think, is the fact that students often get retained, they stay back a grade level, so those students aren't calculated, they are calculated within a more specific dropout rate. This is our specific formula. Again, formulas get complicated, but maybe some folks might like to see that. All right, as a state, these are our dropout rate trends by race and ethnicity. American Indians being the highest in grades 7 through 12. We can see the other ethnic groups that break up here. But when we look at raw numbers, because these percentages are based on percent of the total population of those subgroups, these are the numbers that we get. So you can see that while the black population seems to have a high dropout rate, we're only talking about 19 students. Okay? And for this reason, the slides that I'm going to continue to use only use American Indian and white students, because our other subgroups are too small. They become statistically unreliable, and their dropout rates fluctuate from year to year. This is by race ethnicity. As a state, over 5 years, our dropout population, of course, American Indian is much higher here. We had a dropout prevention program that began in 2000, and it provided dropout funds for programs to 6 schools on reservations that had exorbitantly high dropout rates. So we attribute a lot of this decline to that effort, and we're grateful for those funds. So these are what the 5-year averages come out to for American Indian students in our state: 8.6%, and for our white students, 3% dropped out on average over 5 years. These are just a few fast facts about dropouts. American Indian students are 9 times more likely to drop out of 7th and 8th grade, and 2.5 more times likely to drop out of high school. In the past 5 years, American Indians represented almost 12% of the junior high population, but they accounted for 72% of the dropouts. And I will tell you that the majority of those did come from rural and reservation communities. For high school, American Indians represent 10% of the total school enrollment and 24% of the dropouts. If you're a person that likes graphs, here's a graph that charts that for you. This shows the bottom, the percent of American Indian students that's in this dark color here, that are enrolled here as compared to the percent they are that they drop out. And this is a similar rate up here for high school. And again, American Indians are in that darker grayish color, we'll call it. Dropout rates by race ethnicity for gender. We have American Indian males with the red line, American Indian females in the dotted yellow, white males in the blue, and white females in the light blue or light green, vice versa. American Indian males saw a decline last year. That was the first time that had happened in several years, while in contrast, American Indian females saw a rise in their dropout rates. White males and white females both saw an increase in their dropouts statewide last year for the first time in quite a few years. If we look at the dropout rate over 5 years by grade level, this demonstrates to us that American Indians predominantly drop out in the 9th grade. We have a higher percentage here, but we're talking about fewer students because so many of them dropped out in 9th grade. Whereas for white students and as a state overall, peak dropout rates are in 11th grade and 12th grade. What's so disheartening about that for me is that it means American Indian students aren't even giving high school a chance. That we have to reach them soon. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. I want to talk a little bit about enrollments. It's important that this past year we noticed some interesting things with the data as far as dropouts in urban versus rural areas. So you can see that this is where American Indians are enrolled 20% of them in the urban schools, the larger districts. In schools with 50 to 100% American Indian students, almost all of those are reservation schools except for 2 that are on border towns. You can see that the percentage is much higher, almost 60%. And I just defined there the urban districts, filling those maybe Great Falls, If, however, we look at 5-year dropout rates by urban, 50 to 100%, and non-urban, you can see that the vast majority of American Indian students are dropping out at a much higher rate in our urban centers, as well as with white students. And I said we noticed some interesting things when we looked at the dropout rate by district size. So your district being a 1H district as compared to 4H and 5H, which are a lot of our rural and reservation schools. The dropout rate last year declined for all size categories except the double A's. This breaks that down into the 5-year dropout rate by district size. Overall, much higher percentages for any subgroup as compared to the smaller districts. The it's really no secret there. Students can get lost in larger districts. That's why I'm so excited to hear about so many stakeholders within going into your schools and functioning there to increase those networks of support. If we look at by race again, if you compare 2004-05 to 2005-06, and we look at the dropout rates for students, for American Indian, it was up at every grade level. It doubled here in 11th grade, which is really tremendous. And for white students in 11th grade, the most significant increase was in 11th grade. There were slight increases, maybe about half a percentage point in 9th, 10th, and 12th grade. So that contributes to that overall increase that we saw among white students in the state. Now, if we talk a little bit more specifically about Missoula district data, these are all grades combined in your 3 high schools, and this shows you the dropout rate trends for the past 4 years. We do not have the 06-07 data finalized yet. That will be coming within another month, I've been assured. We do have a new student identifier system. It's called AIM, Achieved in Montana, and we are able to collect data. We expect that there'll be some changes in the dropout method because of this new calculation. So we'll see how that goes. But these are for the past 4 years, your dropout rate trends. This is Hellgate. If we look at just this in isolation, and we look at white students and American Indian students, you can see a steady increase over 3 years. This is Sentinel High School. Had a peak here in 03-04, a decline, and then a stabilizing off, whereas with white students, it's pretty stable over 4 years. And this is Big Sky. Big Sky having the smallest American Indian population among your schools, Hellgate having the highest. Pretty stable here. Slight decline in our 506. If we look at just your American Indian students over a 2-year period, a decline in Big Sky, a pretty stable position in Sentinel, but a big increase of about 8% increase at Hellgate.
Excuse me, Willard School in Missoula, are they figured into these numbers?
Which school?
Willard, the alternative high school.
No,
Yes,
I
they
did not
should
see
be.
Willard.
They should be, because
They should absolutely.
we belong to all the 3 schools. We're a program out of the
They should absolutely be. I apologize. I didn't have too much time to prepare for this presentation, so I tried to get it together as best as I could, but absolutely they should be included in our
They
analysis.
are.
Oh, they are. They're in there.
They're in the schools.
Okay. Homeschool. Good. Okay. I want to look at the achievement gap and some other dropout risk factors. We've talked about some of this already. I think it's important to discuss achievements and expectations in our school, because if students aren't doing well in school, they're much more likely to drop out. These are the Missoula CRT scores last year by race ethnicity. This demonstrates the achievement gap in your school. Almost no achievement gap in 8th grade, the largest gap being in 6th grade. I would point out that I think dropout issues begin for students much sooner than 9th grade. Obviously, I would look at 6th and 7th grade pretty heavily and figure out why students aren't engaged, why they aren't performing well at those levels. So we talk about math, achievement gaps as a state, they increase and proficiency goes down across the board. Almost no achievement gap in 7th grade mathematics, a tremendous gap here in 6th grade. 30, almost 40% gap in scores as a district there. I'd like to point out the CRT scores, and I'd like to point out American Indian student achievement overall as a state, and this just demonstrates it. I'm going to go through it very quickly. American Indian students perform better academically in our urban centers and on the Flathead Reservation. Very different economic profiles in those communities, whereas with all the other 6 reservations, very low socioeconomic status, very low levels of support. I hear about all the agencies that are functioning within this school district, and coming from a small town in rural Montana, it overwhelms me that you have all of this network, and I think it's wonderful. It's something to build on. So you can see where Missoula lies as far as criterion reference tests. I do want to piggyback on something that one of the panelists said earlier. I believe it was Cecil. He was talking about students and their well-being, and we heard from, I'm trying to remember people's names, Jesse, about students' overall mental health and well-being, American Indian students, especially their sense of belonging, being away from their reservation communities. It does have an impact. They may be doing better in school academically, but we have data from the Youth Risk Behavior Survey that shows us that American Indian students in our urban centers are much more at risk to be in a fight on school property. They're much more likely to carry a weapon, not much more, but a little bit more likely to carry a weapon to school so they don't feel safe. They're drinking at a much earlier age, which we heard the substance abuse problems are something important to consider. This is the one that really gets me. They're more likely to feel so sad or hopeless for 2 weeks that they stop doing some of the usual activities. Our American Indian students in the urban centers, this is the most painful one. That is seriously attempted suicide, considering it, is a much higher rate in our urban centers. So students are doing better academically, but socially and emotionally there are some issues there that we have to address if we want to have an impact on dropout rates specifically. These are just some community impact data. We already talked about these federal prison and the state prison population, how that increases if you drop out among our nation. You can look at all of those. We covered those already. This is the dollar amount that students that drop out from high school make. This comes from the Alliance for Education. This is an important piece of data. This is Montana specific. It was out there on one of the documents that was available to you. But for one class, 2003 students that entered in 9th grade, if we had been able to keep those students in school, that they would have contributed this much, $800 million to our state, which is very important. And that's just one class of students. Dropout prevention strategies, there's a lot of research about this. Extending learning time, applying early interventions for academics. I have a problem with interventions taking place hours after a student's had a problem in math. Why can't they be immediate? That's always something to think about. Interventions for physical and mental health issues are crucial. I think we saw that with the Youth Risk Behavior Survey. And high expectations, academic challenge for all of our students is essential. We have to raise that bar. And it was exciting to hear one of your principals talk about that with his staff. I think you're on the right track here. You're involving all your community stakeholders to talk about how to address the problem. Early childhood pays off. If you can get your Head Start folks, I don't know if any of them are here, or other early child care providers, it's important to have them at the table as well. We talked about the focus on the transition from 7th to 8th grade in high school. Freshman academies are very successful around the country. Support students to stay on track and graduate with their class. If they fall behind, if they're retained, they're much more likely to drop out. This one is near and dear to my heart, increasing after-school and summer school opportunities for students, allowing them to apply their knowledge beyond the classroom, and monitoring in large districts equity in participation. Based on the percent that American Indians are enrolled in your school, are they participating in other opportunities on equal levels? That's really important to pay attention to, I think. Increasing community outreach efforts. I love that you have students here. I think it's so tremendous and important. But creating focus groups, because some of your students are staying in school and some of them aren't. Talk to them and find out what the difference is, what is the emphasis there. Establishing advocate systems. This has been demonstrated in several Native American communities. Bringing in Native American elders and people that can serve as mentors and liaisons within the school community is especially important as well. That's my contact information. And I just want to end with one really, really quick story. We brought in Dr. Larry Lazat, the founder of Effective Schools Research. And he talked to all of our schools. We brought all of the reservation schools together to talk about their academic achievement of their students. And he said something that was so powerful. And I think it applies to all of you who are talking about at-risk students, disadvantaged students, American Indian students, students from other ethnic groups that are having problems in school. And Dr. Lazat said, people often look to families and parents and they blame them and they say, they just don't believe in education. And Dr. Lazat said something so profound. He said, it isn't that they believe in education too little, it's that they believe in it too much. They believe that if they hand their children over to you, that you'll do it all. Whereas middle-class parents know schools can't do it all. That's why they have piano lessons and swim classes and all of the other things to create enrichment around their students. But your students that are challenged at home don't have those same supports. So I just encourage you to think about that. And thank you for having me. Thank you for being here.
Okay, well, my panel members, I can't really tell if this is on. Is it on? Yeah. Oh. Just real quickly, while my panel members sweat it out for another minute here, I just want to take a moment to thank that planning committee that worked with the forum to pull together this summit today. You know, the muffins and the coffee, it looks simple, but you wouldn't believe all the details that are involved in bringing muffins and coffee. But I wanted to go ahead and just go and name those people. If they feel like standing, they certainly can. Jess Adams from MAPS. Tim Adams is a VISTA volunteer from Hellgate High. Susan Barmeyer, a parent representative. Lisa Buskevich from Flagship and Youth Development Network. Stacy Beto from actually Early Head Start and MAPS. And Jane Bennett, who's principal at Hellgate High School. Renee Bentham, who wasn't able to join us today, but did a great job getting some of our youth members here. Lorraine Bond from Big Brothers and Sisters. Dory Brownlow from the County Attorney's Office. Jesse Casterson, who was up on the panel today. Molly Cottrell, a social worker at Hellgate High School. John Engen was on our planning committee. Did a great job this morning opening the summit. Nancy Laram, who also teaches at Hellgate. Marianne Moon, who is our moderator and our Safe Schools director. Krista Nelson from Word and Futures program. Terry Vidke, a counselor at Big Sky High School. Peggy Seal, and Rachel Villieu, who is the superintendent of county schools. Thank you all for helping. So far our conversation about dropouts has included a lot of interesting dialogue and facts about whether laws should be this way or laws should be that way. And we've had some great conversation with panel members and with our presenters so far about some of the facts and figures, some of the losses that occur when a young person decides to drop out of school. We really did feel that it was important and really feel that in fact we wanted to ground the summit in the stories of actual people who had left school and hear from them directly before we do the job of breaking into our conversation and ultimately into the work groups that we hope to establish that will carry these prevention efforts forward. So I've asked the panel members who are here today a big thing to come and tell a personal story. And the way that we thought we would do that is that we would each introduce ourselves very briefly first, letting the audience know if we want, what our age is, and also what year we left school and how many credits we had when we left. Then after we do that, we're going to give each person on the panel an opportunity to tell their whole story, as much of their story as they want to tell, in about 5 minutes. Wrapped up in 5 minutes. So I'd just like to start out by saying that I'm Ellie Greenwood and I'm a coalition coordinator with the Missoula Forum for Children and Youth. I'm 47 years old. I did graduate from high school in 1976. I almost didn't because they did start an alternative school in my community, and that is probably what saved me and encouraged me to actually go on and do some further education. So now I'd like to just start on this time through with Sasha and have Sasha give us a brief introduction. Not the whole life story yet, just, when you left school.
Hi, my name is Sasha and I dropped out of high school and decided to get my GED.
And what grade were you when you left school?
I was in 11th grade.
Great.
My name is Rachel Zavarelli. I'm 26 years old. I dropped out of high school 9th grade. It would have been 1996.
Great.
I'm Chris, and I dropped out my senior year. I had 3 credits to go.
You had 3 credits left. Okay, interesting decision.
My name is John Arkan. I dropped out when I was a junior, and I only had 3 credits.
And you had 3 credits, okay, great. All right, so John, just go ahead and hold on to that microphone if you'd like. And let's hear you tell us just a little bit about what your school experiences were like before you dropped out.
Well, I never had trouble in school. Never had trouble fitting in or anything like that, or the work. It was just getting there and staying there. And when I did go, it wasn't to do the work. The only reason I did the work was to kill time, waiting for the bell to ring for lunch to come so I could go do my thing, you know. School, I wasn't going for school. I was going because of my addictions, you know.
Can you tell us a little bit about your family situation growing up?
Oh, my family situation, well, we was always split up. There's 5 kids, single mother. It was very rare to have all 5 kids in the same house at once. And so that made it hard. And I was homeless for 2 years. So that kind of was a big factor in me dropping out. I had bigger things to deal with than going to school. I mean, I was homeless, you know. Didn't have time for school. It's not at all, so.
Okay. Do you have anything else that you would like to add about your plans for the future or your freshman year? I guess it wasn't your freshman year that you dropped out, but it was your junior year.
Well, I came close to dropping out my freshman year. I started the 2nd semester in Ronan High School, and that was just when I finally got around to going to school. I started. It was already the first semester was already over. And my plans for the future, well, I'm trying to redeem myself in the eyes of the law right now.
He's doing a great job, actually.
And I'm in Tom Roy Youth Homes, Missoula Youth Homes, and I'm just trying to, my plans is get a GED. I finally got a job after a while, and I just plan on going to Job Corps, learn a good trade for carpentry, heavy equipment operation, you know, whatever grabs my attention, and then hopefully move back to the reservation.
All right. Thank you for telling us your story, John. Chris, go for it.
Alright, my story pretty much starts in 2002. I lost my father. It was an accidental overdose, and from there it's pretty much downhill. I started partying and not really caring, and then I kind of got back on track, was going to school. I was on track to graduate, and I just found myself bored all the time. Like I was learning the same thing over and over, and it just wasn't very interesting. And really the only class I enjoyed was my small engines class because I enjoyed working on stuff, and they didn't really have enough to offer like that. And so I dropped out. I was going to try the Job Corps thing. That didn't really work out. Realized that I was going up there and burning up a lot of time, and I could just do it here at home. It's probably going to be a bit harder, but just got to work at it a little bit harder.
Okay. Is there anything that you can tell us about the fact that you dropped out when you had all but 3 credits? Was it just mainly what was going on in your life at the time?
Yeah, that had a lot to do with it. I kind of went back downhill and started partying a lot again, and just made a stupid decision.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Jake. All right, Rachel, take it away.
Okay. I guess my story would start in 1996 when I moved here to Missoula from Palm Springs, California. I came here to do my 2nd year, 9th grade, to try to finish out school. I left California to get away from drugs, and while I was here, got pregnant at the age of 14. And I did try to go through school. They did have people there to help out, like a little child care place. The problem was I got a lot of phone calls telling me to come out of class and to help soothe my son because he had colic. And I guess after some time of trying to do that, I just assumed it was better to just drop out and take care of my son and wait until he was in school full time to go back and try to finish my education. And that's what I did recently, and I did receive my GED in January. So.
Mine is that I did also got pregnant and dropped out. It happened last summer. And the only way was I thought, to drop out of high school and get my GED because it'd be easier on my daughter and me. I really did enjoy high school. I look forward to going to school every day and seeing my friends. And
Well, great. So it seems like we had some various different circumstances just right here with just 4 people. We had John experiencing a period of homelessness, Jake having a period of grief and loss in his life, and Rachel and Sasha both experiencing becoming parents while they were still in the middle of high school. I'm going to now ask you just a few nuts and bolts questions. Like, for instance, how did you tell, if you had a parent person in your life that was present during the time that you dropped out, how did you tell that parent that you were dropping out?
that my mom really was supportive and she really understood that I couldn't go to school and still take care of my daughter because she worked and there was no one else, and her dad was still going to high school. And
So she was understanding. You didn't feel that, you didn't have that much nervousness about telling her that you were going to leave school. Yeah. Okay. How about let's pass that microphone around, see what other people had to say to their parents.
Well, at the time, my boyfriend and I were living with my mom and my stepdad. And so my mom clearly saw the struggles I was having trying to go to school and raise this little baby. When I was up all night with a screaming child and whatnot. We talked about it and we both agreed it was better if I just waited it out and went back later when I was ready and my child was older.
And it seems like that's what you did, and it turned out.
Yeah, 3 kids later. But yeah.
Wow. So, okay. Was it kind of tricky for you going back then, after having been gone as long as you were gone?
I actually found it a lot easier.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not too sure why. I struggled with it when I was younger, but then going back, everything seemed so much easier, and I loved what I was doing.
And after being up all night with the screaming kids, like it looks easy to be in a classroom.
No.
Yeah. Okay, let's hear from Jake about that.
Chris.
Oh gosh, I keep meaning to tell myself that Jake is not here. Unfortunately, Jake was willing to come, but he was delayed and wasn't able to come. And I really apologize, Chris. That's why I kept hearing this thing from the audience. What's going on out there? That's my own nervousness. Sorry about that, Chris. You really should have said something.
With me, my dad had passed away in 2002. And my father and my mother, they divorced when I was very young, so I'd always lived with my dad. So when he had passed away, I ended up living with my uncle and my grandpa for different periods of time. Basically, I moved around a lot, and I ended up going to a lot of different schools at the time. and I ended up living with friends, and that's probably where it went downhill, just started partying.
Uh-huh. So there wasn't really any big story to tell a parent or a big disappointment?
I
Yeah.
just quit going.
Yeah. And were your friends supportive of you just doing what you needed to do?
Yeah, because they were pretty much not going either, so
Uh-huh.
I gave them somebody to hang out with, while everybody else was at school.
That makes sense, yeah.
Well, I failed to mention earlier that I didn't want to drop out. That was the last thing I wanted to do. I had a blast in high school, but I was scared. There's this transition into a group home, and the thought of me might go into jail. I wasn't, so I caught a ride to the reservation 10 o'clock at night. I ran from that group home I was at, caught a ride to the reservation. My mom, she was staying with my Auntie Tracy. And midnight, I come pulling up, knocked on her door, 2:30 in the morning, and there's really nothing she can say after that, because she already knew. She knew exactly what was going on. And then after that, I was running around, running wild on the reservation, looking over my shoulder. It sucked, so I was glad when I came back and got back on track.
All right, the other question that we talked about asking when we were sitting up here as a group was if you had any advice to give to other young people who were either in similar circumstances as you or who you know of actually who are considering dropping out of school. I mean, I know Sasha and Rachel, you left school so that you could be parents, basically. It was hard to do both. But if you knew other young women who were considering dropping out of school in your same situation or just thinking about it, what would you tell them?
I would say try hard and try not to drop out of school because it's high school. It's everybody's dream to graduate high school, and it's GED, yeah, it helps and it's easier, and you can go when you have a job and you can leave early from GED just to go. But I don't recommend dropping out of high school.
Okay. Thanks. Go ahead.
I guess if you were in a situation where you were pregnant and had a baby, hopefully you would have some kind of support there with your family or know somebody who would help with the baby. I mean, that would make a big difference right there. Other than that, I mean, as far as, drugs, playing out, don't do it. It's just, you feel more proud about yourself if you go ahead and go through with finishing high school all around. The GED is great, but I don't think there'd be any greater feeling than having that actual high school diploma saying you made it through. Other than that, I don't know.
Okay, thanks for those insights.
I would definitely say don't do it. It makes things really hard. I've been pretty lucky. I ended up getting a job where I used to work while I was still in school. My boss was really cool. He liked my work, and he was more than willing to take me back. And so I lucked out there, but I have applied at a couple of different places and haven't gotten hired. And I would say it's probably because I don't have my diploma. So I'd
So
say
it's maybe
don't drop
not-
out.
yeah.
Get your diploma.
Okay, thanks.
Well, I would have to say, when you're faced with challenges, like we all were, you gotta do what you gotta do, if it comes to dropping out, then that's what you're gonna have to do. You can always come back and get your GED, there's no problem with that. And that's what I think, and that's exactly what I'm doing, I didn't have time for high school. So I had to do what I had to do. And that's what I would say, you know, I mean, you got stuff to take care of it. But if you're gonna stay in high school, because high school is where it was all at, I mean, I had a blast there. And if you're gonna go and have fun, you might as well do the work. I mean, you gotta sit through classes. So, that's what I have to say.
That was great, thanks. Thanks, all of you, for those thoughtful answers. Now, we were going to ask one more question of all the panelists, and then we had an idea about how we would take questions from the audience. So the last question for you guys, from me, is if there was something that someone in the school or the community or even your family could have done differently to make it possible for you to stay in school, or even pave the way to a GED program or a Job Corps program more easily, what would it have been? So if there's one thing that could have been different that came from outside of you, what would it have been?
Well, I think that there's nothing the community could have did for me. I mean, this was stuff that me and my family had to worry about and do for ourselves. I mean, we couldn't depend on the community. Not saying you guys ain't dependable, but you know, it was just things we had to take care of within ourselves, not the community.
Thanks, John.
Actually, Mr. Ribke and I have actually talked about this, and it's one of the reasons why he picked me to do this. Like I said, I was bored at school. I mean, I was tired of learning about Shakespeare. I mean, it's pointless stuff. I mean, why do I need to know about Shakespeare? I'm more of a hands-on person. I want to go out and build houses, you know, make a career out of building houses. If they would have offered more classes like that, I think I would probably stay at something more interesting.
Can you, so name a few of the classes?
They had small engines, which was all right, but I mean, working on a lawnmower, rebuilding a lawnmower is so simple. It's boring. They should offer, you know, rebuilding cars. You know, they offered body and paint, which was in a small engines class, but they should elaborate more. You should have had, you know, been able to work on an actual engine, work on like drivetrains and all that stuff. I'm really fascinated with cars, and if they could have went more into depth with it, you know, I would have been a lot more interested.
More hands-on stuff.
Yeah.
That would be like tangible skills that you could go out and then start
Yeah.
your career or your professional
Or
life.
carpentry, I really enjoy carpentry.
All right. How about you, Rachel?
Well, I like what he had to say because it makes a lot of sense. But of course, in my situation, I didn't see any way to do it, to make it happen. And so that was my decision.
And was it like you mentioned that when your baby had colic, you missed a lot of days of school, and then people were asking, where are you, and where are the assignments? Do you even have a recommendation about how that policy could be different, or do you think it should be different for people who are pregnant or parenting?
You know, it is hard for anybody going to school with a child. You have all that stuff to do at home all the time with that kid, so it's like, well, where do you get time to do all this? Maybe if it was like more hands-on stuff in class, stuff you can do in your class time and get done. I mean, it would make more sense than saying, here, you have to do all this tonight. And making you feel like, oh, I can't do this, you know? And I think that's where like, people drop out, is they feel the pressure to get things done at a certain time.
It's true, I had kind of heard everyone say at a certain point they had to figure out what had to go and how could they possibly make their lives a little bit easier and more manageable for themselves. And it seemed like school was the thing that people chose.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Well, I think the community is great because there's still kids in school and they're doing something right, but I chose to drop out and have a kid, and was my decision, so.
So there's not anything someone else could have done out there or in the schools to make that different for you or easier? It was just kind of really an internal decision.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we're going to be here after this panel is over, and we're going to have a community conversation about more things that we could potentially do to support students, and we want you to stay for that conversation too if you'd like. This is how we thought we might open up the panel for discussion. Obviously, there's a little, a little discomfort about questions that you don't know about that may be coming your way. So what we thought is, first of all, if nobody wants to answer the question, they just don't have to answer it. And then I'll just ask for the next question, basically. So if you feel like you have a question that you'd like to ask and you won't feel hurt if panel members don't answer it, then you go ahead and ask your question. But we wanted to make sure that panel members were comfortable not answering any question that they didn't feel like answering. So we're going to go ahead and take 2 or 3, maybe 4 or 5 at a time. Okay, I saw the woman in blue in the middle.
This is for the 2 lovely ladies. You now have children of your own. What are the steps that you're going to take to make sure that they don't drop out?
All right, one thing, I've already had the sex talk with my 11-year-old. And I think, I just made sure he knows he can come to me if he was gonna do anything like that. Me and him are, more than just, mom and son. We're friends. So I think that's one big thing right there. And then I think my kids seeing me go to school to get my GED was really big because they saw how much it meant to me. And, I think those are my 2 big things right there, so.
All right. Now, you 2 young men have never been pregnant, but would you like to just add to that question if you like, what you would do to prevent a young person of your own from dropping out? Are you good to pass on that? All right. Do we have another question?
Thanks so much for coming today, and because I think it's pretty rare to get up and tell your personal story in front of so many people. And I guess I'm kind of curious, what encouraged you to do that? Because it was probably a pretty, it's something you could have passed on. And what, relationship or experience that you had that said, hey, I'm going to get in front of a whole bunch of people today and kind of lay it out there.
Well, the reason I did it was Renee, I can't remember the gal's last name, Emma Dickinson come to me and asked me if I wanted to do this. And she told me all about it, the details and whatnot, and I figured if I come and tell my story, then maybe the community can take some steps towards helping kids like me in being successful. That's why I did it.
The reason I did it is because sometimes I get this feeling like people don't understand me and understand why I made the decisions I did. And I guess this was just my opportunity to set things straight.
Is there anything else you'd like to say now that we're kind of in this open period to set the record straight?
Well, don't look at all like dropouts as stupid people that couldn't do it. Everybody's got their own reason for doing what they're doing.
Thank you for saying that.
I would have never thought this, but I faced discrimination from getting a GED, and it feels the same as the discrimination I was receiving in Howgate High School for being Native American. I mean, they call me a damn loser, Oh, you're a loser. Because I asked them, well, if you're struggling so bad, how come you don't get a GED? Oh, those for losers. And I was like, just brought me back from when I was walking through the halls in Howgate and got told to go back to my reservation.
Wow, thanks, John. Okay. Yes, on the end there.
I just wondered if their parents had any influence on their decision to quit, or if they were interested. I mean, if their parents were part of that conversation, or if anybody wanted to talk about that.
Well, my mom was very supportive. Like, she knew my mom had got pregnant and got her GED too, and so she was very supportive, and she knew how hard it was gonna raise a child and trying to go to school and wake up in the morning while you're staying up all night with kids.
So that was great that you had someone in your life who'd actually been through what you went through.
Yeah.
And so she could give you that authentic support, even maybe when other people weren't understanding what's going on. That's great. So did you have a little girl or a little boy?
I have a little girl, and girls are too hard to take. She's gonna
All right, let's see if we see any other questions out there. Go ahead, here in the front.
I work at the university with students, and I appreciated what you were saying about mothers and fathers going back to school and really setting a wonderful example for their kids. It makes such a difference in their lives, and I'm so happy that you guys are doing that for yourself and your children, for yourself. But I'm wondering, also, that stigma of the GED is really interesting, but can you go on to, directly on to the College of Technology or the university, right? And so, there's all those possibilities. Do any of you think about doing that?
Okay, that was my goal.
Great, okay. I'm glad you can answer that because I wasn't quite sure how to.
Okay, well, as soon as I got my GED in hand, that was my plan, was to see what I could do about getting into college or whatnot, and if there was financial aid for me and all. The problem was my husband was struggling financially to make it, and so I had to step in and get a full-time job also. So we're seeing, how that's going to work out and all,
But your plan was to get, one of the reasons you went back to get your GED was that...
was to go back to school, college. Still to this day, my kids are like, we want to see you go to college. And I said, well, honey, right now it's kind of hard.
It's a financial
because my husband makes too much for us to get any kind of help. But then again, we barely get by. So we're in that odd.
Go ahead, John. I think John's gonna. Did you have something to say about GEDs in college? Okay.
Yeah. From what I hear, Native Americans get a lot of help going into college, transitioning into college. And so I thought, if I get a GED, what the heck, I'll take advantage of all the help that's being given to me and go to the U maybe, I don't know. I still didn't get my GED yet, but I'm working. And I thought, go in there just for a specific class, carpentry, heavy equipment. Even if I don't receive any degrees or anything, at least when I graduate this program I'm on, drug court, and I'm ready to leave and go to job corps, I won't go in there blind. I'll have an idea of what I'm doing, So it would just kind of be like, a step to reaching my goals.
And that's my understanding as well, is that the GED does serve the purpose of being a bridge to the next step. And in fact, we have a couple of people here from the Dickinson Learning Center, and they're nodding their heads yes. You can go to the College of Technology, and you can go on to the university.
Correct.
And are there any particular requirements, or are you on academic probation, or?
The GED is one of the criteria. I believe the university also has a certain age grade requires SAT or ACT testing.
Oh, okay. Did everyone hear that?
But not in the technology.
Okay. All right. So let's see if we can take a couple more questions. Yes, you had your hand up for a while.
For all of you, did you have people at school who tried to talk you out of that decision to quit?
For me, I kind of figured from my freshman year, I kind of figured I wasn't going to make it in high school. But when the time did come, it was August 3rd before the school year started. So when I left, I mean, there wasn't anybody there to stop me or
Okay.
even try.
So you think it was sort of a timing issue? I think it was a little bit of a timing issue in terms of your contact with teachers.
Yeah, if I was going to school and come to my Nancy Laram and Cecil Crawford, I bet that they would try their best to talk me out of it. But other than that, I mean, and Miss Marilyn Beers.
With me, we just started the second semester, and I just kind of quit going. But Jesse from Big Sky, he did try contacting me, and it's like, "What's up, man? We're worried about you." So I did come back, and I didn't come back to school, but I'd stop in and visit with him every now and then.
That's great. Now we know Elsie walks the talk. Huh? That's good. That's great. How about either of you gals at the end?
No, nobody tried to stop me really. I don't quite remember if I even told anybody I was gonna leave. I think it just kind of happened, and I told my mom, just, I don't know, call school, and I think that's what happened.
And then no follow-up call that you
No
made?
calls, nothing.
Okay. All right.
My friends were disappointed that I decided to drop out and get my GED because we all planned that we were gonna graduate high school together and be dorm buddies together, but never worked out, and they kind of got over it like a while later. So.
All right. And no teacher particularly stepped in?
I lived in Seattle, I went to high school in Seattle, and we moved here for the summer to be closer to family, and so I went home to Rocky and got pregnant.
Yeah. So you sort of disconnected with your school, and then
Yeah.
just didn't go back. Okay. And I wonder how often that actually happens. That young people decide during the summer, I'm just not going to go back. Yeah. Okay, I think we have time for question in the back. Yes. Way back, in the blue shirt, I think.
I was just curious, this is basically for the two fellas, if you say you like to do things, you just want to do hands-on, someone's mentioning that heavy equipment operation, or whatever, or mechanics, you were also talking about small engine, things like this. Do you think if there were an opportunity somehow, if there were an avenue, where while you were in high school and you were in this period of maybe I'll drop out, maybe I wouldn't drop out, that if you had an opportunity, if there was some avenue where you could have gone to the College of Technology to get some hands-on experience, whether in heavy equipment operation or whatever, if there were an avenue to do this, do you think that might have prevented or helped or stopping you from dropping out? Is that a possibility?
With me, I actually had an opportunity. I didn't find this out until after I dropped out, but my small engines teacher was going to help me out, and he was going to get me to Harvard for auto mechanics. And we kind of discussed it, how he could pull some strings and actually get me into Harvard. But while I was there, I never seen anything happening, so I just kind of dropped out. If I'd have known that I could have gone up to Harvard, would it change my mind? I don't know. I never really saw myself going to college. I just kind of saw myself graduating, getting my diploma, and going to work. I mean, that's what I seen my dad do, and that's what I figured I'd do.
Okay. Anyone else want to take a shot at that question?
Can I hear the question again?
While you were in high school, okay, I know you were having a blast in high school, but you said that in particular, I think you said that you enjoyed working with your hands, you wanted to interested in heavy equipment operation, carpentry, and things like that. I don't know if it would have done anything in your particular situation, but if there would have been an avenue for you at that time to go to the College of Technology in Missoula, where there was opportunities to take some of these hands-on, get some of these hands-on experiences and skills, do you think that may have made a difference with you dropping out? and it may not have in your particular situation?
Maybe if I was going to the College of Technology specifically to study one thing, but if I had to go there and worry about all the other stuff, all the other work in school, I doubt it, because like now I can get my GED and go to a community college or a job corps for one specific thing. I won't have to worry about all that other stuff. And then, you know, if I didn't have all the other stuff to worry about, yes, it would be an option for me.
It would seem manageable to you.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks for asking the question. I'm going to take one more question. Have I been ignoring this side of the room? I'm seeing hands pointing in different ways. Since I see you, I'm going to ask you to go
I
ahead.
just have a question.
Okay.
Like you talked about stigmas for GED and being called a loser and whatnot. Do you think that if the GED campus is on the College of Technology or at the university, that it would kind of destigmatize it?
So if you were going to their GED classes, like at the College of Technology or at the university, do you think that it would help people to maybe give it a little bit more respect, and that there would be a little bit less of what you characterized as the kind of like, oh, that's a loser thing to do?
Well, the College of Technology just sounds a little too classy for my part.
So there you go, Barry. There's your answer. Okay. How about anybody else think that it would make a difference if the GED program were located at a university or a College of Technology?
I don't think it would. I kind of agree with him. I think, you know, I guess it is stereotyping, but a lot of people, you know, have problems, and they are usually kind of lower class citizens. I mean, and I guess it would be kind of intimidating to go onto a college campus and get your GED.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I want to make sure our gals on the end, since they don't seem to be microphone holders, if they would like to speak. Okay. All right. One thought we had about ending this panel and wrapping it up and sort of showing our admiration and respect for these young people coming up here and telling their personal stories is to ask you, all of you folks out there, to just turn to your neighbor momentarily for like a minute and ask and share with each other what was a highlight from this panel. What did you learn about kids who drop out? What did you learn about these specific kids' stories that surprised you? And then I'm going to ask 4 or 5 of you to share that with us when you're done having your moment. We did have one request from the audience while we were chatting to let the audience know that John here on the end has actually written a book. Is it a book about your life?
My life?
Mm-hmm.
No, I'm writing 2 books. I have one published now, and then the second one will be my memoir.
Okay.
It's a good 42-page book, but this one I have now is just about an experience I had over Christmas.
All right. Great. Is there any place where we could pick this book up?
Is Marilyn C. Stone available? Right in the back.
Marilyn, do you have a copy of the book in the back? I do. Oh, right.
It's called Life on the Ankle Bracelet by John Arkin.
Well, I'm glad that we got that book notice out there. All right, well, now I'd just like to take 3 or 4, maybe 5 people who have a highlight. Yes, Annette?
I just want to say how proud and Dickinson Lifelong Center we are of our students, and in particular our 3 students who came to share their stories today. We were sharing with Rachel her joy over getting her GED and how much we celebrate every time we get a list of new graduates. And we just feel so privileged to work with these folks. And I'm so proud of them. And I would also like to point out that our country has a lot of leaders, a lot of politicians, a lot of celebrities, and movers and shakers. got their GED.
Well, thank you for being
And
there.
so you have every opportunity to do whatever you want.
All right, so you're hearing that from Annette. All right, and I'd like to just say thanks and give a round of applause to the GED program. A couple more highlights from the panel, things that surprised you. Yes.
Artie talked a little bit about, I think educators sometimes are very famous for feeling like we've let you down. And I'm wondering if I heard the correct thing from all of you, that it was not the school, but it was your personal decision and your life that made you decide.
I see a lot of nodding going on up there. It's interesting because the research about dropouts in the country currently, actually one of the things that they say is that almost all dropouts who are surveyed say that it was entirely their fault. So I think that in this conversation about dropout and dropout prevention, we all carry around a certain sort of burden of guilt and sadness when it doesn't turn out well. And maybe the idea is to take our guilt and our burden of sadness and turn it into some level of accountability that we all have. I think that the young people up here today have shown without doubt that they feel completely accountable for their lives, for their children, for their decisions. And I think that is something that we need to, sometimes in the adult community, maybe particularly the provider community, just take a moment and take a deep breath and realize we've got 4 very accountable people up here. And I thank you for that. Okay,
Well, I wanted to say,
want to respond to that?
yeah, you did the best you can, and that's all we can ask for.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, John. Yes, in the middle, you have a highlight you'd like to share?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you for sharing. You guys, you really are great at sitting out there and telling us your stories. And I just want to say that I don't think it's necessarily anybody's fault. Like John said, it's you were making the choices that you had to do with what you had. And, you know, I don't think that making the decision to drop out of high school is a class issue. I don't think that it's a high class versus a low class kind of a thing. You know, like Dickinson was saying, you know, lots of leaders have dropped out of school and you know, have become something. And so it's not a loser thing, I don't think at all. It's just working with what you have. So.
Right. Thanks. Let's give a big round of applause to these guys. And to help us with that part of today's summit, we have Ami Thurman from the National Coalition Building Institute, the Missoula chapter. And maybe Ami will have an opportunity to say a few things about NCBI and the work that they do in the community. But as a member of the NCBI chapter, I just want to say all my experiences with NCBI and the work that we've done on prejudice reduction in the community have just been incredibly moving and compelling experiences, and I feel so happy to have Ami here with us today. Thanks, Ami.
Really, my job here is to actually now turn it back over to all of us as a community. We've had panels up here, we've got experts up here, and now it's time to turn it back over to those of us who are here to think about how do we process this information and move forward. I think that you know, we've heard a lot today. We've heard about the numbers of dropout, the impact that that has. We've heard that there are some trends, some very real trends in terms of the high level of Native students who are dropping out of school, the high rate of teen parents who struggle to complete their education. So there are some things that we can look at and see there are real trends there. And I think the core vision is that we want everybody in this community, all young people in this community, to be able to advance in their education as far as they can and to get what they want out of it. And I have so much respect for our panelists in reminding us that there's not one right way to do that. And that I have full respect for each one of these people. And I loved what John said about, you know, people got to take care of what they got to take care of. And we have to figure out as a community how to make space for that, while at the same time doing everything we can. I really heard Rob say earlier, the schools that take on dropout prevention make a difference, that schools can make a difference. I heard Gypsy and some of the community folks saying that when community members add resources like Mountain Home, it makes a difference. The success rates in terms of completing education go way up. We know that community programs can make a difference. We know that schools can make a difference. We know that community members and families and supports can make a difference. So what we want to do then is to kind of turn this back to ourselves and look, well, what do we need to either shore up in our community or add to what exists so that we can have even more supports for the young people here. In your little brochure thingy programs, I think there's a handout that has a few questions on it. Does anybody have one handy that can? So in a moment, we're going to actually ask you to just group out those 4 or 5 people around you and take a few minutes to look at this handout and jot down some notes. The first question is, what existing efforts to prevent dropouts are working that could be expanded or replicated? You might reflect back on the things you've heard said today. There was a lot of conversation about, well, Willard is working, Project Success is working. Maybe we need to figure out how to find funding to sustain, if not expand, those programs. The second question is, what other needs exist? What are things that are not being met right now? Some of the ideas that I heard were around, changing the number of days that people can miss before they start to become an intervention. Maybe it's around changing the maternity leave in the schools. Are there other needs that exist that we might need to address? And thirdly, and I think this is a critical question, how can the community and the schools partner to more effectively meet those needs? What are some innovations like, that I heard come out about the College of Technology? Is there a partnership there that might be able to meet some of the existing needs? Are there some other innovative community partnerships? So I'm going to give folks just a few minutes with 4 or 5 people sitting around you to do some brainstorming, and then we'll come back and hear some ideas. We will be collecting all these sheets of paper so we can gather all the ideas, so try and write legibly. And take a few minutes with people around you and come up with some ideas for us. I'm going to spend a few minutes sharing some of the ideas you came up with. And the vision of this session, which Ellie's going to say more about in a minute, is to be much more than just another meeting where we identify a whole bunch of new things we could do, but to take really together as many ideas and find out where the momentum is in Missoula and move into some action planning and some implementing some things in the coming year. So there is a real vision around that. I want to just spend some time with each question and hear from a handful of folks on what they came up with. And because I think it's helpful for us to hear and excite and mobilize us as a community. So for the first question, in terms of what existing efforts could be expanded or replicated, who would like to share what you came up with? Hear from a handful of folks.
Okay, we'll talk.
Yeah.
We love Willard. That was going to be our new t-shirt slogan.
Go ahead and stand, Gypsy.
Okay, so just the idea of Willard, the fact that it's so strength-based, creative, individual, all of those things. But in addition to that, we're able to have the Willard program come in to the Department of Corrections and help provide education to our incarcerated youth. We have creative learning labs through Willard for youth homes, students who aren't mainstreamed into the classroom. We also have education programs at the APHP mental health program. So just this whole idea of alternative education and meeting kids where they are and in programs that aren't flexible, that you can't drive all the kids to Willard and that kind of thing. We just really, really praise your guys' program.
Excellent. Who else has got something for the first question? Somebody in the back? Yeah.
I guess I'm kind of stuck on this cyclical cycle. With the generational
speaking or listening to all of the students here, a lot of it, what I heard was this generational thing and this cycle thing that keeps on happening. And we have all these incredible community supports in this community. It's just how educating people on decision making and how to work the system and what resources are out there, I guess, is because there are resources that can help people. But having those decision-making skills and inferences and things like that can help support people so that they can get out of that cycle. And making that okay for families to get out of that cycle as well, because for some it's not okay for them to be out of that cycle. This is their comfort zone, and we're asking them to step out of their comfort zone, and that's really scary.
So rather than expanding services, really increasing the connections between people and those services that do exist.
And making that okay.
And changing the
not
cultural
only
norms around it. Great. Other thoughts around existing efforts that we want to shore up? Yeah.
I guess I think we should make sure we're still working towards credit recovery in summer school. Because sometimes kids do really well and all of a sudden their life falls apart one semester and they need to make that up. And in that same realm, maybe to expand it so that we pull it into some more hands-on business, that they get English credit for doing something that would help them, like coming to Missoula Children's Theater and working with this, but it also, plays, it's everything. So kind of expanding that whole idea of getting credit recovered.
Great. Yeah.
I think expanding programs like the Young Families Program, I think the challenge for a lot of the young women is that it's only at Sentinel, and they'll have to leave their home school to get there, or they'll have to drop their, whatever, transportation issues around that.
I see, and even with a couple of our panels members today, that if we can give more education and start earlier on pregnancy prevention, and if any of you know me, this is definitely true and dear to my heart, that if we can start before they're having babies, maybe we can prevent one or two from getting pregnant and dropping out.
So more supports for young families and more pregnancy prevention. Any other thoughts for the first question? Yeah.
I think it goes further than just with the pregnancy too. We have a lot of kids that do not have support at home. And even though they don't have a baby at home, they don't have the time, they don't have the energy, they don't have the environment in which to do any work. And I like that they said, if I could just do it at school, I could get it done. And our schools aren't like that. And for some kids, they need that.
Right. So that gets sort of to the second question is sort of what are the unmet needs? What are unmet needs, other needs that exist that we aren't addressing right now? So thoughts on that? Thoughts on the second question? Yeah, Lorraine.
Well, what I was hearing pretty clearly, especially from the two young men on the panel, was that the opportunities for education for them was not in our system. And we do provide opportunities for high excelling kids to go to the university and take courses, but we don't provide those same opportunities for kids to go to the COT. And I think that would be very fair. Kids could graduate from high school and be able to earn an income instead of a minimum wage.
I think that's an interesting idea. I thought of that too, Lorraine, because I know a number of kids who have taken advantage of the ability to do classes at the university because they're doing really well in school, but there are other kids who would do much better at COT perhaps, and how do you make that equally available? Other things to meet, other unmet needs currently in Missoula. Yeah.
I'm not an educator, so I'll preface by saying that, but I've had 3 children go through Hellgate High School who I'm interested in our schools looking at the age range spectrum of freshmen, because so many of the feeder schools really encourage this grade between kindergarten and first grade, and that brings you a 16-year-old freshman, either at the end of their school year or during the summer. And it's hard coming into school as a freshman, a straight A freshman, and being older, when that's not really recognized. And traditionally your freshman year is known as maybe your easier year. If you're a hard-working student, good at school, and you're older, kids will say to you, how many times did you fail? 15 or turning 16, and so it just gives you that option in your 16th year then, if you completed your freshman year, to go take your GED, when maybe if we look at those kids coming in, not just as freshmen, but let's look at what ages they are and how they're doing. Maybe they're fully aware of that in schools, but Hillgate has a higher dropout rate. And part of that is we get lots of kids from feeder schools that have that extra grade. There was a huge emphasis 10, 12 years ago in putting kids into that extra grade to sort of maturationally catch up. Well, they're ahead then when they get to high school, and it's tough to keep them there.
Other unmet needs, yeah.
The one thing I haven't heard addressed is, and looking at a lot of the data for our students at Great Falls, poverty is a big issue for dropout. Strong connection. Kids who are at poverty level, they're far more likely to drop out than any other group. And I haven't even heard that mentioned here. Perhaps maybe you need to be looking at how we can be helping those students who are poverty related, because I mean it's generational with a lot of our kids, and it's a different. I think that's the elephant in the room right now, and it affects us, and I think it affects every school district within Montana. And how are we going to be addressing the needs of poverty students? Because it is different from any other group, the education needs that they have.
Yeah, other unmet needs.
I think two of the things too that we heard up here were recognition and challenging, like where they need to be challenged, and like someone was saying back here, like being glad and recognizing, like, great, you came to school today, or you turned in a homework assignment, that's awesome, and even students who are excelling who may feel a little bit behind, like someone was saying back here, challenging them where they, like, whether it's hands-on, and they need to be challenged that way, or another academia. And also maybe reviewing the disciplinary action both inside and outside of school, and the fact that students get in trouble, they get a 5-day out-of-school suspension or something, and that to me doesn't really seem like, I don't know, I feel like there could be something else that could be done with that.
Yeah, Rebecca.
I mentioned the curriculum, and someone over here said that, maybe with this No Child Left Behind, they can't change that. But as some of my families, their children go into the high school system, they're put in classes that I mean, like in algebra, there's not like a basic math, it seems like, or I can't get them into something that I know that they're going to succeed at. They're supposed to be, well, they're in high school now. That was the comment I had. They're in high school. But he's a freshman, and he's already talking about dropping out because he can't keep up with it. The families, again, just like the lady over here said, it's generational. His parent struggled. She has lots of issues, poverty, many things like that. And it's true, they're not going to go home and get help. They're not going to get that extra, like, your how many reports have we helped our children with? They're not going to do that. So I think assisting them to get their work done at school and making a curriculum that will be helpful. A lot of children need basic math. I mean, how many here use algebra out of this? They need a lot of that basic stuff that they're going to use every day, and that doesn't seem to be in the curriculum. I think making the curriculum come to the child, that everyone is not ready for algebra as a freshman or transitional, things like that. And so making that adjust to the child so that he will succeed and he will get educated.
One more on this, Maurice.
I'd like to just remind people of what John had said about issues of discrimination in school, that it's really important as administrators and staffers to take a look at the sense of necessary homogenization some of these kids feel that they need to participate in order to fit in school, and it thwarts them to some degree from expressing their own individuality. I just think that we can design a system that's more accepting of individuals and groups.
think that's critical. And I don't know how many others of you were surprised. I know I was by Mandy's data that though Native students are excelling academically in urban schools, socially, and in terms of their mental health, they're struggling. So the academic achievement isn't the only indicator there. And I think we really need to pay attention to that. So I would love to hear some of the ideas people came up with for the third question in terms of how might the community and schools partner to effectively meet the youth in our community's needs. What do people come up with? Yeah.
Maybe we need to work more effectively with the community schools, that is, and have a team effort similar to like an IEP meeting. When kids are high risk, they're kind of giving us the message that they might want to drop out, but have people meet together almost like an intervention. Like we really care about you, and when they look around the room and they see how many people care, then that might be effective. The other thing in response to Chris would be probably an expanded vocational program for kids who like hands-on.
So there might be opportunities for partnering there for expanding vocational. Yeah, Lisa?
And I just wanted to add, and with Chris, not to recognize that when he's 3 credits short, but to recognize that this freshman year. So.
Yeah, I'm just looking for some hands we haven't seen here. Here we are.
I think one of the things we have to really look at is we're looking at a good possibility of a budget crunch in the next couple of years at the high school level. And we're talking about the fact that we need to help these kids understand the relevance of their education and finishing it. Well, we're unable at the high school level, unfortunately, to create these new classes, bring them on board, enhance our career education in all courses because of budget funds, restriction on budget funds. And so to say to the community, we need pressure on our legislators to give money to education because we can't, I'm in business education and I see the relevance all the time, and I understand that we have to offer career education. I had Chris in county. And I kind of commented to him, I tried with you, okay? I was one of the people that really, he saw the relevance there. But the thing is we didn't have enough to offer him because we don't have the funding to add those classes or those programs or to sustain those. Our Perkins money in vocational is getting cut. I got 28% cut in business education this year. 28% of my funding is gone. And so it's hard for us to sustain those programs that are making relevance with a lot of these kids that are having troubles making the connection. The other thing is, at the national convention we just went to in December, they're saying that only in the near future, only 4% of our students will not need some form of post-secondary education. All students. Chris and John were both saying they needed more education after they left high school. But we can't get them to even transition through high school because we don't have the programs at the high school level to support their needs. And it's a funding issue, and we need to apply pressure.
And so what I hear you saying too is in terms of opportunities for partnerships is to really build some partnerships with the business sector and the schools and the community to be a lobbying force.
And we've done this out in Seattle. I went to one section where they identified young ladies that were dropping out of high school. There's a whole program for it. It's called GIST out of Seattle. And what they did is when these young ladies, when they identified they were going to drop out, they brought people in from the community to talk to them about the different careers they do out there. And ladies that are now successful in different careers that were thinking about dropping out themselves, they partnered with those specific peoples and they start doing job shadowings. And we try to do job shadowing through our smaller learning community grants, but our grants are going to be up in 2 years. We need the funding to make the relevance for the students. We have to have it somewhere.
I want to just say funding is such a critical need, and I also want us to think about in terms of what are the partnerships that could start today. I know that there's a couple people, Joni Kickney-Woman and Leon Stewart, who started a Native Wellness Institute of Missoula, and they have drum groups happening at the Boys and Girls Club every Wednesday night. They're totally ready today to work with kids in the schools to add some of that culturally based supports that Cecil talked about and that Mandy talked about. So there are some things right now that we could do to develop those partnerships People are willing to do it now. So what else? What are some other innovative ways a community and schools can partner together? Cecil.
Something that has been talked about is maybe we could partnership with all the artists that are in Missoula. The arts are getting cut in the school. I don't even know if they're funded, but you're expected to do art all through school, but you won't see an art teacher until 8th, 9th grade. We support basketball and football. How many, the University of Montana is a great basketball team. How many play for the NBA? Chris Goliak used to. Yet from this little town, just think how many nationally recognized artists are here. Imagine if every weekend we were cheering for Rudy Audio, buying his supply, bringing him to art shows. But we don't do that.
Good.
That could be done today.
Absolutely. Other ideas of community partnerships, yeah.
I just want to cover, I'm from Great Falls, and I'm with the COT of Great Falls, and I know that we are already doing partnerships with the high school there, and I know that they do here in Missoula, but it goes back to that funding issue. If we don't have the funding, it's not going to happen. And you as a community can pull that together. You need to go to your legislators and say education needs to be a #1 priority.
Good. Let's see, yeah. Black and white shirt, yes.
In relation to that funding issue, we're looking at in the next, 6 months losing things like Project Success and Flagship and a lot of the other supports that are in the school. So, a lot of things that are working now to reduce some of these issues that planes drop out are looking at getting cut. So that's another issue that's on the table right now.
And it makes it that much more critical that to have a critical mass from today that really decide to join in efforts to keep moving forward on this. Here are just a couple more ideas before we kind of hand over to next step. So if you've got a really innovative, exciting idea, I want to see your hands up. Now they went down, right?
One thing that we do at Willard is, it's amazing. I'm new to Willard, but they meet every Monday, and we go through every single student. And it's after school, it takes a lot of effort, but we go through and look at them academically and attendance, and it's amazing. And I think that's something that I don't know if bigger schools could break down. I know there's a lot more students, but I don't know, that really works.
Great.
I just want to echo that IEP idea, but really mention that I think we have to hear what so many of these kids said, that you couldn't accept me in school. But if we're having these meetings where we're sitting down and saying, so what's not working? Well, then maybe Willard would, or maybe this program would, so they don't drop out of the system and have to come back in and try to figure out where their transcripts are and all those things. That we actually streamline that movement and listen to what the kids are saying. Because if they're going to leave anyway, then let's keep them in school at some level, whatever that looks like. But it's going to take a team, it's going to take time. And I know everybody's strapped for time.
And Catman?
I'm in one of those very typical spaces to where I just got out of high school a couple years ago, and I had a very difficult time because I have ADHD and dyslexia both, which makes it very, very difficult. But without any funding from the government or anybody else, one person came beside me and said, I will help you. I'm in this field today making more than minimum wage. Because that one person said, listen, I'm in this field, you're good, let's help. So although funding is very, very important, we don't have to wait for the funding. Everybody has a neighbor and has a kid who they can say, listen, you're interested in this, let me help.
And I think we can't understate that point, and we also don't have to do one or the other. And I think what we have to figure out as a community is how do we do both? How do we work on these structural issues and get the funding we need for the services that are working, and how do we engage more people in building those kind of individual connections. So I'm going to close with you. Thank you all. Give a big round of applause for all your ideas.
Okay, we're coming into the home stretch. You can always tell because you start to look out and the seats are empty. So that lets me know that it's time for people to be moving on with their days. But before we actually move on, I want to ask everyone to freeze and take that piece of paper that you just filled out with your group and be sure to deliver it to the person who's going to be standing at the door. We got 2 people womaning the doors so that we can get all these ideas down on paper. So that's one of our next steps, is to just capture all these ideas that you've pulled together here just in these small groups in just a very short period of time. And then what we'd like to do after that is make sure that people also indicate on the postcard that hopefully 100 of you received in your programs. And in this postcard, if you could check off whether or not you're interested in being in a future work group, or whether or not you're just interested in staying connected in kind of in general with this group of people who have connected today. The difference is, if you self-select for a work group, you will be called on to work. And that work group's first job is going to be to establish an action plan with the first 3 steps that we want to take as a community to develop a dropout prevention plan. And we're hearing so many great things here today. A possible work group maybe to work on funding, a possible work group to work on laws and legislation, another work group to identify people in the community who could step up and say, I would be willing to have you come be an apprentice in my workplace while you finish your high school education in school. So those are just some examples. But I want people to understand clearly that on the postcard, we're going to call you to work if you indicate that you would like to be in a work group. And we would love to have all of you sign up for the work groups. We know that might not be possible, so we also want you to consider signing up to be a member of the forum and just getting our regular announcements through our email tree and our bulletin board, or the middle option of signing up and hearing about events like these and then coming and helping us participate. I do see a question back from Lorraine.
Yes, not everyone has postcards, Ellie, so is there an alternate way that they could get that out?
That is a tricky part. If you didn't get a postcard, you weren't one of the 100 lucky people who got a postcard, please put your contact information just on any sheet of paper or on the back of your evaluation. We also had some evaluations available to people at the front desk where you signed in. And we would also appreciate really getting the evaluation of the day as well. So I think that might be the best strategy, Lorraine, is just to actually ask people to write their contact information on the back of any sheet of paper and then indicate whether or not you'd be interested in being part of a work group. And before I forget, Nancy Marks asked me to announce that if you signed up for OPI referral renewal credit, that you need to come back and pick up your credits at the registration table at the end here. So I'm going to be rather brief about those next steps because I think that what we really intended in our vision to bring together a group of people from the community today was to bring together a diverse group of people, which we've done, we've been successful at, from a lot of different walks of life, to talk about the issue and have an initial conversation, and then have you self-select in to the next level of activity that you'd like to be involved in. There's such a brain trust in the room. I'm really hoping that people will look beyond this initial conversation and be involved with us in future efforts. I also just am so impressed that at one point we counted people, and there were 150 people who came for an early morning thing with not that good of treats. They were okay. They were positive. And I'm so impressed, and I just want to give you all a big hand for coming here. Thanks. We do want to officially close this summit, and we'd like to do that with some final words from Commissioner Jean Curtis.
The young man from MCAT, I think, summed up what America's Promise is all about, which I was asked to bring a few words about. Missoula was selected for the 3rd time as being one of the 100 best places for children and youth to grow up. And America's Promise has 5 promises, the first of which is a caring adult. And I can tell by the folks that are here that all of you have been a caring adult to more than one person in your life, and that's really an important thing. The second one is to have safe places, and even places like the schools should always be a safe place, Mountain Home's a safe place. Hopefully we have safe places for kids and young people. A healthy start is really important. I think we all know that the younger we start to talk with, to work with kids and give them the attention they need, the better off we are. It makes a big difference. Things like art is very important. The younger that there was a study done years ago, and I don't have the statistics anymore, but they had done a survey in a prison, and 90% of the people there had never had art. And yet, if you go and survey CEOs of big companies, they did have art. So the arts are important. An effective education, we all know, is very important, and opportunities to help others so that they can give back to their community. For those of you who don't know me, my background has been in early childhood, and I served as the state PTA president for 4 years, served on the national PTA board for 4 years, so things like parent involvement have always been important to me. And I remember one time talking about parent involvement at the school, and we talked about the fact that it can be the fact that somebody got breakfast. It isn't always that they come to the school. So then you look back at Maslow's theory, and food, shelter, and love are really important, and yet we don't get to hug kids at school. So maybe we should be looking at that. Parents are, especially in Missoula, are often working more than one job because can't afford rent. The PTA, local PTAs brought a speaker here one time, and he talked about the fact that how we kind of, we put labels on kids early. And he said that if we went back and looked at John F. Kennedy's grades in high school, his parents would have very likely been told, you know, he's not doing real good. You might want to think about putting him in a tech school. Because he was getting C's and D's in school. But we all know that he went beyond that and found his place. I love the idea of figuring out ways to have better ties with the College of Technology. I think poverty does play a huge part. I remember how much my kids had, how much you had to pay for those calculators in high school. And the clothes, the cost of clothes, I remember giving my kids a limit as to how much they could spend on clothes, and so they'd be very creative and buy that darn, at that time, a $30 sweatshirt, which is probably peanuts now. And one of my kids wore it inside out, and the other one wore it right side out. They traded to have that special t-shirt. Transportation is a huge issue. So maybe we should look at some new things. Maybe we should offer some classes online. Why can't they take a College of Technology class from the University of Great Falls, or the College of Technology in Great Falls, or MSU Billings, and have that count? We need to make sure that we don't let rules cause dropout decisions and set kids up to fail. Unfortunately, one of the things that we have here is kids in detention. And I'm not sure if we've changed this rule, but it was a rule that if you were in detention, that counted towards your 10 days off. And yet we have a captive audience there to give them some education they might not be getting if they were just skipping school. So we need to make sure that things like that don't cause the kids to fail because they're getting their 10 days while they do have education opportunities in the jail. It's not a place we want to be educating them, but thank goodness they get it. Another thing that I heard people mention was the fact that school can be boring. One of my kids was lucky enough to be in the Gifted and Talented program when they first started it in Missoula Public Schools. And I remember thinking, golly, if everybody had that same opportunity to learn about bugs by playing with bugs, they would all succeed. We read about kids being successful because of going to the Sylvan Learning Center or some other program like that. Well, the reason it works is because they're a small, really focused education practice. We need to figure out a way to do that. Bullies is another one. I happened to be sitting at the light by Hellgate the other day when kids were coming out for lunch, and I kept watching. We have a problem in our family. Our bladders are real close to our eyes. This one kid kept standing there, and he had no friends picking him up, and it bothered me a lot. And I know kids are just mean, and sometimes they aren't thinking about it. So we need to make sure that doesn't happen. Bullying often happens right under our nose, and we just kind of go, oh, just suck it up. But it's hard. So we do need to work on funding our education. Our special ed program has never been funded at the federal level, at the level it was supposed to be. The state, we put more money in education, but education costs more. And when we lose kids in schools, it's never that we lose all the third graders in Lewis and Clark School. We lose a little bit here and there. We can't cut that. We can't cut arts. Small communities within the schools are really important. I can remember, I think it was 1996, I was the state PTA president, and I went to speak to Governor Roscoe of the Board of Regents, and they were talking about what their budgets were going to be. And at that time, we were putting tons of money in the prison system. So when the governor finally let me talk, he was mad at me afterwards, but I told him it was time to fund education and we could have fundraisers for the prisons, and I would chair the committee. We could call it Cupcakes for Convicts. He turned about this color. He was really angry at me, but it's true. We managed to fund other things, and we need to fund education. We need to figure out ways that we can reach all the kids. And just by looking in this room, I can tell that we have the people here that are willing to do it and to make a difference. I was at a school board meeting, probably 10 years or more ago, and at the beginning of the meeting, they talked about the enrollment, and that month, there were 60 or 70 kids that had disappeared off the rolls in the high school. And I turned around to one of the high school principals and said, where did they go? And he couldn't tell me. We need to know where they go. Our numbers aren't really accurate because sometimes it means that they went to Billings or they went to Oklahoma or something like that. But we need to know, we need to care, and we need to let kids know we care. So thanks for coming and putting up with me being a crybaby.
Oh, that is heavy lifting. Oh my goodness. You guys are very close.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, good. I know.
So I was going to get a job. I love this job. He was always on the
Are you Dan?
No, I'm not, but Janice can find her card.
Okay.
You're the one for the poverty thing, right? Yes. I think poverty should be a part of it. How do we get it to be?
I have no idea.
What it is devastating as dyslexia or ADHD practitioners
was not looking for anything. Find out.
He dropped me and he came over.
Stories were struggling. Yeah, that's what like we're celebrities, but that's where we all, that's why we're doing that sharing. Oh, really? Hi. Hello. I'm so happy to see you. I didn't like the dress. Yeah. No, I'm not.
Sometimes yeah, come on, man. Come on. What are we doing now?
No fun.
Bye, guys. You guys great trying this afternoon. We're going to head over the honor closing for a watch. Okay. And
State. Got anything to just red, white, or blue?
No, I know that she was like that.
Yeah.
Oh, I do. I do. I do. In fact, it's all just part of the relationship. Because nobody's really out there with well, you know what?
Middle of the gymnasium? Yeah. Oh, you went to court. That's what I was trying to figure out how to get to. So you're applying. I am a big thinker.
You know, in spite of your comments, the students are
Oh, it's on my desk.
Well,
and it's hard to speak. And it's the teachers who
But I have a.
oh, it's just rounds and
Well, Jesse, it was really great seeing you tell that. I saw her.
She said.
And of course I was.
it's just we're here hours.
I'm sure you can think so. And then Sealy is targeted that you grant you have, so. Okay.
I don't.
Okay, yeah, would you?
And with multi
Actually, I don't know.
Cheese this afternoon, so like where is it?
Lovely.
Yeah, let's get that done.
Get some paperwork today.
Okay, so you want to
See you later.
Okay, Jean, thank you again for coming.
You bet.
I look forward to it. Okay, we're together.
Thank you so much. You did such a nice job. And Ellie, you did such a great job with those kids.
I'm so glad that you did.
I think we all did our areas of expertise.
That guy there is the guy who's